My dad scoffed, "She's just a security guard." Minutes later, the TV flashed my face and the room fell silent as they realized who I really was. My name is Samantha, and at 29 years old, I never expected to be the center of attention at my father's lavish wedding. For years, he introduced me as just a security guard with that slight grimace that made it clear he wished I had chosen a more prestigious career. But everything changed that day when what I do for a living suddenly mattered more than anyone could have imagined. The look on his face when someone shouted my name and pointed to the television screen is something I will never forget. My father, Richard Williams, built his life around status and appearances. As a senior investment banker at one of New York's most prestigious firms, he measured success in dollar signs and social connections. Our home in the suburbs was immaculate, our vacations were extravagant, and our family photos perfectly staged for his office desk. But beneath that polished exterior, our relationship was always strained by his impossible expectations. I was 12 when my parents divorced. My mother, Audrey, had finally had enough of his constant absence and emotional distance. She was a kindergarten teacher who valued compassion over competition, and their values had grown too far apart. The custody arrangement meant I spent weekdays with Mom in her modest apartment and weekends in Dad's sleek penthouse overlooking Central Park. Those weekend visits became increasingly tense as I grew older and began making my own choices. Dad had my life mapped out: prestigious university, law school, then joining one of his friends' firms. When I announced my plans to join the military after high school, he reacted as though I had told him I was joining the circus. The military, he had scoffed during one of our tense dinners. "Samantha, people from our background do not enlist. They become officers if they must serve at all. I enlisted anyway." For years in the Army taught me discipline, leadership, and, most importantly, that I had a passion for security and protection. After my honorable discharge, I used my GI Bill to get a degree in criminal justice while working part-time as a campus security officer. From there, I built a career that made me proud, even if it never impressed my father. By 29, I had worked my way up to a senior position at Meridian Protection Services, one of the most respected private security firms in the country. We handled everything from executive protection to event security for high-profile clients. I specialized in threat assessment and had recently led security for a diplomatic conference that earned our firm industry recognition. My supervisor had even nominated me for a Professional Achievement Award. None of that mattered to Dad. In his world, success had a narrow definition. The fact that I wore a uniform instead of a power suit meant I had failed to meet his standards. When his wedding invitation arrived in the mail, I almost threw it away. "Richard Williams and Eleanor Harrington request the honor of your presence." The cream-colored card with gold embossing screamed extravagance. Eleanor was wife number 3, a socialite from a banking family who moved in the same circles as my father. They had met at a charity gala, and their engagement had been announced in the society pages of the New York Times. "You should go," my friend Alicia urged when I showed her the invitation over coffee. "Maybe this time will be different." "Different how?" I stirred my latte absently. "He'll introduce me as his disappointment of a daughter who chose to be a security guard instead of a lawyer." "Then prove him wrong," Alicia said. "Show up looking amazing. Be polite but confident and do not let him make you feel small." Shopping for wedding attire with Alicia turned into an all-day event. We finally settled on a navy blue dress that was elegant without being flashy, paired with simple silver jewelry. Looking in the mirror, I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe this time he would see me as the accomplished professional I was, not the daughter who had disappointed him. The night before the wedding, I called Mom for moral support. "Just remember, honey," she said, "his inability to appreciate your choices is his failure, not yours. You have built a life that makes you proud, and that is what matters." I held on to those words as I packed my overnight bag for the weekend at the luxury resort where the wedding would take place. Deep down, a small part of me still hoped for reconciliation, for some sign that my father could see my value beyond the career path I had chosen. It was that glimmer of hope that made me pack the invitation book, the train ticket, and prepare to face the judgment that awaited me. What I could not have known then was how dramatically this wedding weekend would change everything between us. The Rosewood Resort sprawled across 30 acres of manicured gardens and pristine beach. As my taxi approached the main building, I spotted white tents gleaming in the distance where I assumed the ceremony would take place. Even from afar, I could see the elaborate floral arrangements and crystal decorations catching the midday sun. The lobby buzzed with wedding guests checking in, many of whom I recognized from Dad's social circle, women in designer sundresses with perfectly highlighted hair, men in tailored casual wear, discussing stock options and real estate investments. I felt instantly out of place despite my carefully chosen outfit. "Samantha," my father's voice carried across the lobby. He approached with Eleanor on his arm, both of them looking like they had stepped out of a luxury lifestyle magazine. "You made it." His greeting was polite but distant. A quick cheek kiss that barely made contact. Eleanor offered a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "So glad you could join us," she said, her gaze already drifting to more important guests arriving behind me. "The rehearsal dinner is at 6. Do make yourself comfortable until then." They moved on quickly, leaving me standing alone with my overnight bag. A bellhop appeared to take my luggage to my room, and I found myself with hours to kill before the evening's events. The rehearsal dinner took place in a private dining room overlooking the ocean. Round tables draped in white linen filled the space, each decorated with elaborate centerpieces of orchids and roses. Place cards in elegant calligraphy directed guests to their assigned seats. Mine was at a peripheral table far from the head table where my father and Eleanor would sit. I was midway through a glass of wine when my father appeared with an older couple in tow. "This is my daughter Samantha," he said, his tone casual. "She is a security guard. Not a security professional, not a threat assessment specialist, not a senior operative with Meridian Protection Services, just a security guard." As though I spent my days checking IDs at a department store. "How interesting," the woman said, clearly struggling to find something positive to say. "Richard tells us you were in the military," her husband added, attempting to rescue the conversation. "Yes, Army," I confirmed. "4 years active duty." "Well, thank you for your service," he said, and I could see them both mentally searching for a graceful exit from this conversation. My father provided it. "Let me introduce you to Eleanor's brother. He just made partner at Goldman Sachs." As they walked away, I overheard the woman whisper, "A security guard." With Richard's connections, she could have been anything. This scene repeated itself throughout the evening. Each introduction followed the same pattern: "My daughter Samantha, she is a security guard." Sometimes, he would add, "She chose a different path," with a slight shrug that communicated volumes of disappointment. By the time dinner was served, I had been introduced to at least 15 people, each time reduced to my job title, stripped of all context and accomplishment. Each introduction chipped away at my resolve to stay for the entire weekend. During the main course, I escaped to the restroom and texted Alicia, "This was a mistake. He has introduced me as just a security guard to everyone." Her reply came quickly, "Remember why you are proud of what you do. His opinion does not change your value." When I returned to the dining room, I found myself seated next to the event photographer, perhaps the only person there working in a service capacity like me. "Tough crowd," he commented quietly, nodding toward the table where my father held court. "You have no idea," I replied. "I overheard one of your introductions," he admitted. For what it is worth, security is way more important than what most of these people do. I would rather have someone who can protect people than another investment banker. His kindness nearly brought me to tears. I managed a smile and thanked him for the support. As the evening wore on, I retreated further into myself, sipping water instead of wine to stay clear-headed. I contemplated leaving first thing in the morning, skipping the wedding entirely. The thought was tempting, but something kept me there. Perhaps it was stubborn pride, or the tiny hope that tomorrow might somehow be different. What I did not know then was how different it would be, though not in any way I could have imagined. The wedding day dawned sunny and clear. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 in the afternoon with cocktails and reception to follow. I spent the morning avoiding the wedding party, opting instead for a long walk on the beach and a quiet lunch on my room's balcony. By 3:30, guests were beginning to gather in the garden, where rows of white chairs faced an elaborate floral arch. I slipped into a seat in the back row, exchanging polite nods with strangers who had no idea who I was. Better that way, I thought, than another humiliating introduction. It was during the pre-ceremony bustle that I first noticed something off. Working in security trains you to spot anomalies, things that do not quite fit the pattern. A catering staff member caught my attention, not because of any dramatic behavior, but because of subtle inconsistencies. His uniform fit poorly compared to the others, and he seemed unfamiliar with standard service protocols. More tellingly, his eyes constantly scanned the crowd in a pattern I recognized from my training, not as someone looking to serve guests, but as someone assessing targets. At first, I tried to dismiss my concerns. Professional hazard, I told myself. I see threats everywhere. But the nagging feeling persisted as I watched him speak briefly with two other staff members, both displaying the same alertness that seemed out of place for catering personnel. I discreetly moved closer, positioning myself near a service entrance where I could observe without being obvious. The man I had first noticed disappeared inside, and against my better judgment, I followed at a distance. The service corridor led to a kitchen area bustling with actual catering staff. The man I was following slipped through quickly and entered a storage room at the far end. I waited, pretending to be looking for a restroom when a kitchen worker glanced my way. Minutes later, the storage room door opened and I ducked behind a large cart of glassware. The suspicious man emerged with the two others I had seen earlier. They spoke in hushed tones, but I managed to catch fragments of their conversation. Rich pickings, estimated $2 million in jewelry alone, after the vows, during the champagne toast, for more coming through the east entrance. My blood ran cold. They were planning a robbery, and from what I could gather, it would be executed during the reception when guests would be distracted and valuables less guarded. The timing made strategic sense. A room full of wealthy people wearing their finest jewelry with attention focused on the newlyweds. I retreated silently, mind racing. My immediate instinct was to call the police, but I needed more information first. If these were just 3 individuals, venue security could handle it. If they had 4 more coming, this was a coordinated operation that required immediate police intervention. Finding a quiet alcove, I placed a call to the local police, keeping my voice low as I identified myself as a security professional and outlined my concerns. The dispatcher assured me they would send officers to investigate discreetly, but it would take at least 20 minutes for them to arrive. Next, I located the venue's security office, a small room tucked away near the management offices. Inside, I found a single security guard monitoring camera feeds. "I need to speak with your supervisor immediately," I said, showing my Meridian Protection Services ID. "There is a credible security threat to the Williams-Harrington wedding." The guard, a man in his 50s named Carl, according to his name tag, looked skeptical, but called his manager. Within minutes, I was explaining what I had observed to the head of resort security, Michael Jenkins. "We cannot disrupt the ceremony based on overheard conversation," he said after listening to my assessment. "But I will place additional security personnel around the perimeter and alert staff to be vigilant." "The police are on their way," I informed him, "but they will not arrive for another 15 minutes at least. In the meantime, I suggest you position your team at all exits and have them watch for anyone matching the descriptions I provided." Jenkins nodded, impressed by my professional approach. "Are you carrying?" he asked quietly. "No," I replied. "I am a guest at the wedding." "The father of the bride hired additional security for the gift table and jewelry," he noted, checking his clipboard. "We have 2 armed guards positioned there already." The threat I overheard suggested multiple perpetrators, I warned, possibly 7 in total, with 4 yet to arrive. They mentioned the east entrance specifically. As Jenkins mobilized his team via radio, I returned to the ceremony which was now beginning. Guests were seated, music played softly, and the wedding party began their procession. I slipped into a seat at the very back. My attention divided between the ceremony and scanning the perimeter for suspicious activity. My father stood at the altar, beaming as Eleanor walked toward him on her father's arm. In that moment, as genuine joy crossed his face, I felt a pang of sadness for our broken relationship. But I pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the immediate threat. As the ceremony progressed, I noticed 2 unfamiliar men in catering uniforms position themselves near the gift table. They moved with a deliberate casualness that raised immediate red flags. I texted Jenkins with their location and description, then slowly made my way toward the back of the seating area to maintain visual contact. The officiant was just pronouncing my father and Eleanor husband and wife. When I spotted another suspicious individual near the bar set up for the reception, this one carried what appeared to be a concealed weapon under his jacket. My hand tightened around my phone as I typed another alert to Jenkins. As guests applauded the newlyweds, I realized with growing alarm that the police had not yet arrived, and the situation was escalating faster than anticipated. The robbery was not planned for later, as I had initially thought. They were positioning themselves now, ready to make their move. As the ceremony transitioned to reception, I had seconds to decide my next move. Warn my father and cause a scene that might provoke the armed suspects into violent action, or continue monitoring while waiting for police backup. Years of training kicked in, and I chose the approach least likely to endanger innocent guests. Moving casually but purposefully toward the closest suspect, I prepared to do what I had spent years training for, even if it meant ruining my father's perfect wedding day. The transition from ceremony to reception happened quickly. Servers appeared with trays of champagne, and guests formed a receiving line to congratulate the couple. I maintained visual contact with the three suspects I had identified, noting with growing alarm that they were now communicating via discreet earpieces. I checked my phone. No message from the police yet. Jenkins had positioned his security team as I suggested, but they were understaffed and under-equipped for what was coming. My military training and security experience told me this situation could deteriorate rapidly. The first sign that the robbery was beginning came when the lights flickered briefly, an intentional disruption to the venue's electrical system. In that moment of confusion, I saw the suspect near the bar reach into his jacket. "Gun!" I shouted, diving toward the nearest group of guests as the man pulled out a weapon. Chaos erupted immediately. The armed man fired a shot into the air, causing screams and panic as guests ducked for cover. "Nobody move," he commanded. "This is a robbery. Cooperate and nobody gets hurt." Two more men revealed weapons while others began collecting valuables from terrified guests. I caught a glimpse of my father and Eleanor huddled together, his arm protectively around her as one of the robbers approached them demanding jewelry. From my position behind an overturned table, I assessed the situation. 7 armed robbers, at least 30 guests in immediate danger, no police in sight, and venue security outgunned and hanging back. An elderly woman near me began experiencing what looked like a panic attack, drawing the attention of one robber who approached with his weapon raised. "Shut her up," he snarled to the woman's companion. The elderly man looked terrified. "She needs her medication, please," I said. "Shut her up." The robber raised his gun menacingly. I made my decision in that split second. Rising from my position, I addressed the gunman calmly. "I am a medic," I lied. "Let me help her before she has a full cardiac event. You do not want a death on your hands." That is the difference between robbery and murder charges. The robber hesitated, then jerked his gun toward the elderly woman. "Make it quick." I moved slowly, hands visible, kneeling beside the woman while positioning myself between her and the gunman. Up close, I could see she was indeed in medical distress. Deep breaths, I instructed quietly while assessing the positions of all armed suspects in my peripheral vision. "I am going to help you and everyone else here. Just focus on breathing." The woman's companion squeezed my hand in silent gratitude. As I pretended to help with breathing exercises, I spotted the police arriving outside through a window. The robbers had not noticed yet, too busy collecting valuables. The leader was now confronting my father, demanding his watch and Eleanor's diamond necklace. "Take it," my father said, his voice shaking as he unclasped his Patek Philippe. Eleanor removed her necklace, tears streaming down her face. The leader grabbed the jewelry, then pointed his gun directly at my father's chest. "The safe code for the bridal suite now." My father paled. "I do not know it by heart. I need to check my phone." "No phones." The robber snapped, pressing the gun barrel against my father's temple. Something inside me snapped at the sight of my father so vulnerable. Whatever our differences, I could not watch him die. I caught the eye of the venue security chief across the room and gave him a subtle nod. He understood my signal and readied his team. "There is a master list of codes at the front desk," I called out, drawing the leader's attention away from my father. "I work here. I can get it for you." The leader turned, suspicious. You work here doing what? Security, I said, rising slowly to my full height. I know the resort protocols. As hoped, the leader approached me, drawn by the prospect of easier access to the resort's secure areas. As he came within range, I made my move. Years of combat training took over. In one fluid motion, I disarmed him, using his momentum against him to take control of his weapon while simultaneously striking a precise blow to his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping for air as I secured his gun. His accomplice reacted immediately, firing in my direction. I felt a searing pain in my upper arm, but maintained my grip on the leader, using him as a shield while calling out to the security team. Now, the venue security team emerged from their positions, as did two undercover police officers who had managed to blend in with the crowd. Gunfire erupted briefly, but the robbers, seeing their leader captured and police presence established, began to surrender. One tried to escape through the kitchen, taking a server hostage. I handed the subdued leader to a police officer and pursued despite the bleeding wound in my arm. Moving silently through the kitchen, I located them near the loading dock. It is over, I called out. Police have the building surrounded. The robber tightened his grip on the terrified server. Back off or I will shoot her. I kept my voice calm and authoritative. You are making this worse. Armed robbery becomes attempted murder if you pull that trigger. Right now, with good behavior, you might see daylight again someday. While maintaining eye contact and dialogue, I shifted position gradually, moving to create a better angle of intervention. There is no way out, I continued. Put down the weapon and let her go. For a tense moment, I thought he would shoot. Then, perhaps seeing the determination in my eyes, he lowered his gun slightly. That momentary hesitation was all I needed. I lunged forward, deflecting his weapon arm while simultaneously freeing the hostage with a precise strike to his wrist. The gun clattered to the floor as I subdued him with a restraint hold I had perfected during my military service. Police officers rushed in seconds later, securing the suspect and checking on my injury, which was bleeding freely. You need medical attention, one officer insisted. Check on the guests first, I replied, pressing a kitchen towel against my wound. There is an elderly woman who needs medical assistance in the reception area. Making my way back to the main hall, I found the scene secure. Police had all suspects in custody and paramedics were attending to guests. My father stood with Eleanor, both looking shell-shocked as they spoke with a detective. When my father saw me, his face registered shock at the blood soaking my dress sleeve. Samantha, you are hurt. It is just a graze, I said, though the pain was intensifying as adrenaline began to fade. Are you both okay? Before he could answer, a paramedic intercepted me, insisting on examining my wound. As I was led to a treatment area, I heard one of the guests say, "That is Richard's daughter." Did you see what she did? The next hour passed in a blur of police statements and medical treatment. The bullet had indeed just grazed my arm, requiring stitches, but causing no serious damage. As the paramedic worked, police officers came to take my statement, expressing amazement at my intervention. If you had not identified the threat and acted when you did, this could have been a massacre, the police captain told me. These men are part of a crew that has hit 3 other high-profile events this year. They do not usually leave witnesses. I downplayed my actions, insisting I had just done what anyone with my training would do. Eventually, the commotion subsided. Guests were allowed to leave after giving statements, though many lingered discussing the dramatic events. My father approached as the paramedic finished bandaging my arm. The police said you saved lives today, he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued, including possibly mine and Eleanor's. I did not know how to respond. Years of dismissal and disappointment could not be erased by one moment of crisis, no matter how dramatic. I was just doing my job, Dad, I said quietly. Even if it is just being a security guard. His face flushed at having his words thrown back at him. Eleanor touched his arm, perhaps sensing the tension. We are so grateful, Samantha, she offered. The police want to interview you again tomorrow for the investigation. Will you come to the brunch? Exhausted and emotionally drained, I agreed simply to end the conversation. All I wanted was to shower, change out of my blood-stained dress, and sleep. The reception was obviously cancelled, the venue, now a crime scene, being processed by forensic teams. As I left, a local news crew was setting up outside interviewing shaken guests about the attempted robbery. I slipped past them unnoticed and returned to my room alone. I awoke the next morning to my phone buzzing with notifications. My arm throbbed as I reached for it, memories of the previous day flooding back as I read through the messages. Alicia had texted multiple times after seeing early reports of the incident on the news. My boss at Meridian had called twice, leaving messages asking if I was okay and saying the company was incredibly proud. There were even messages from former military colleagues who had somehow heard about what happened. The most surprising notification was a voicemail from my mother. "Honey, I just saw what happened on the morning news. Call me as soon as you can. I am so proud of you, but so worried too." I had avoided the reporters yesterday, but apparently the story had still made headlines. I turned on the television in my hotel room and found a local channel already running the story. Breaking news: attempted armed robbery at luxury resort wedding foiled by security expert. 7 suspects in custody after dramatic intervention by wedding guest identified as security professional Samantha Williams. I watched in disbelief as shaky cell phone footage showed portions of the incident, followed by interviews with grateful guests, describing my actions in increasingly heroic terms. "She moved like something from an action movie," one guest gushed. "She saved that elderly couple and then took down the leader right as he was threatening the father of the bride." Another segment showed the police captain at a press briefing. The quick thinking and courageous actions of Miss Williams prevented what could have been a tragic outcome. These suspects are part of a crime ring responsible for multiple armed robberies targeting high-profile events. Thanks to Miss Williams, they are now in custody and facing numerous felony charges. I turned off the television, feeling strangely detached from the person they were describing. In truth, I had just relied on my training and done what needed to be done. The alternative, standing by while armed criminals threatened innocent people, including my own father, was never an option. The bandage on my arm needed changing, and the hotel room felt suddenly claustrophobic. Despite my reluctance to face my father and his guests, I decided to attend the brunch, if only to give my statement to the detectives, and then leave. After a careful shower that kept my bandaged arm dry, I dressed in the only other outfit I had packed, a simple black pantsuit I had brought in case the rehearsal dinner had been more formal than expected. It would have to do though the jacket fit awkwardly over my bandaged arm. The brunch was being held in a different room than the originally planned venue, a smaller space that felt somber compared to yesterday's elaborate setup. When I arrived, the event was already underway with subdued guests picking at breakfast buffet offerings while discussing the previous day's drama in hushed tones. Eleanor spotted me first, breaking away from a conversation to approach me. "Samantha, thank you for coming," she said, her usual polished facade showing cracks of genuine emotion. "How is your arm?" "It will heal," I replied simply. "I understand the detectives wanted to speak with me again." "Yes, they should be here soon." She hesitated, then added, "Richard has been trying to explain to everyone how proud he is of you. It is just, well, it has all been such a shock." I nodded, not trusting myself to respond. After years of dismissal, my father's sudden pride felt hollow, a reaction to public acclaim rather than genuine appreciation of who I was. As I made my way to the buffet, picking up a cup of coffee, I had no appetite for actual food. I noticed the stares and whispers following me. Guests who had barely acknowledged my existence yesterday now watched me with newfound interest. My father was holding court at a table near the window, surrounded by his closest friends. He seemed to be midway through a story, gesturing emphatically. As I approached, I caught the tail end of his words, "Always knew she had potential." That military training really paid off, did not it? I paused, coffee cup halfway to my lips. Was he actually trying to take credit for my actions? Implying he had supported my military service when he had actively opposed it. Before I could decide whether to confront him, a staff member approached to inform me that the detectives had arrived and were waiting to speak with me in a private room. Grateful for the interruption, I followed her out. The interview with the detectives was straightforward. They needed additional details for their investigation and wanted to confirm certain timeline elements. They informed me that all 7 suspects were in custody and that evidence in their vehicle had linked them to 3 previous armed robberies at high-end events. "You will likely be called to testify when this goes to trial," the lead detective explained. And there is already talk about a civilian commendation from the department. I thanked them but downplayed the suggestion of any award. I was just doing what I am trained to do. Well, not everyone with training acts when the moment comes, the detective replied. From what we have gathered, you saved lives yesterday. When I returned to the brunch, I intended to make a quick exit. I had given my statement, made an appearance, and saw no reason to prolong what was already an uncomfortable situation. My father, however, had other ideas. There she is, he called out as I entered, drawing all eyes in the room to me. The hero of the hour. I forced a polite smile, uncomfortable with the attention. My father approached, putting an arm around my shoulders in a show of affection that felt foreign after years of distance. I was just telling everyone how you have always had this protective instinct, he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. Remember when she was 10 and stood up to that bully at school? Always looking out for others, my Samantha. The selective memory and revisionist history were too much. I carefully extracted myself from his grasp. Dad, I should really get going. I have a train to catch. Nonsense. You cannot leave yet. People want to hear about your security work now. The way he said security work was different than before. Not dismissive, but almost boastful, as if my career had suddenly become acceptable now that it had made him look good by association. I was saved from having to respond by a commotion near the bar area of the room. Someone had turned up the volume on the television mounted on the wall, which was showing a breaking news segment. We have more details on yesterday's dramatic foiling of an armed robbery at the Rosewood Resort, the news anchor was saying. The security expert who intervened has been identified as Samantha Williams, a decorated military veteran currently employed by Meridian Protection Services. The screen switched to show a professional headshot of me from Meridian's website, followed by security camera footage of the incident that someone had obviously provided to the media. There I was, moving with decisive purpose as I disarmed the lead robber and coordinated with security personnel. A hush fell over the brunch as everyone turned to watch. The news segment continued with interviews from law enforcement and security experts praising my actions and professional assessment of the threat. Then came something I had not expected, footage of me pursuing the final suspect through the kitchen and resolving the hostage situation captured by the venue's security cameras. I had not realized anyone had recorded that part of the incident. As the footage played, someone across the room exclaimed loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Holy, she is on the news." All eyes swiveled from the television to me, standing frozen near the doorway. I watched my father's reaction as he stared at the screen, his champagne glass slipping from his fingers and shattering on the floor. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden silence of the room. The news anchor continued, "According to police, this criminal organization has been targeting high-profile events for months. Sources close to the investigation tell us the jewelry and valuables they had already collected from guests at yesterday's event were valued at over $300,000 before Williams intervened." As the segment ended, the room erupted in conversation with guests pointing between me and the television in amazement. My father remained rooted to the spot, champagne pooling around his expensive shoes, his expression a complex mixture of shock, embarrassment, and something that might have been the beginning of genuine respect. In that moment, everything changed. Not because I needed or wanted his approval, but because for the first time he was seeing me as I truly was, professional, capable, and valuable on my own terms, not his. The broken champagne glass seemed to break something in the room's atmosphere as well. The polite society veneer cracked open, and suddenly everyone wanted to speak to me. Guests who had barely nodded hello the previous day now approached with effusive praise and questions about my work. "Is it true you were decorated in the military?" one of my father's business associates asked. "You work for Meridian. They handled security for the governor's inaugural ball, did not they?" another questioned. "The news said you spotted the threat before anything happened." "How did you know?" a woman in expensive pearls inquired. I answered politely, but briefly, increasingly uncomfortable with the attention. This was not how I had imagined this weekend going. I had prepared myself for dismissal and disappointment, not for becoming the center of attention. My father had not moved from his spot by the broken glass, though someone had come to clean up the mess. Eleanor stood beside him, whispering something in his ear as he continued to stare in my direction. "If you will excuse me," I said to the group that had gathered around me, "I need to speak with my father." As I approached him, I saw something I had rarely witnessed in my entire life: Richard Williams at a loss for words. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, uncharacteristically uncertain. "Dad," I said simply. "Samantha," he replied, his voice unusually rough. "I did not realize. The news report said you were up for a Civilian Bravery Award apparently." "So," I confirmed, though that was never my intention. "And you work for Meridian?" "They are the top firm in the industry." "Yes, for 3 years now. I mentioned it at Christmas dinner last year, but you were discussing the stock market with Uncle Robert." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I see." Eleanor squeezed his arm. "Richard, perhaps you and Samantha should talk privately." He nodded, motioning toward a small alcove away from the main brunch area. As we walked, I noticed the room had divided its attention between us and the television, which was now showing follow-up coverage about the foiled robbery. "The news is saying you saved lives," my father said once we were relatively alone, including mine and Eleanor's. "I did what needed to be done," I replied evenly. "I have been," he hesitated, searching for words, "too uninformed about your career." Uninformed, I could not help the edge that crept into my voice. "Dad, you have been actively dismissive. You introduced me as just a security guard to everyone at this wedding." He winced. "I did not understand the nature of your work." "You never asked," I pointed out. "Not once in 7 years have you shown any interest in what I actually do. You decided my career was beneath you, and that was that." He looked genuinely surprised. "I thought you were working minimum wage security jobs, mall security, or nightclub bouncer work. And that would make it okay to dismiss me, to make me feel small in front of your friends." The question hung between us. On the television visible over his shoulder, they were now showing my professional biography: Army veteran, criminal justice degree, specialized training in threat assessment, and VIP protection leadership role at one of the most prestigious security firms in the country. My father's eyes followed mine to the screen. "You protect important people," he said slowly, as if realizing something for the first time. "Yes, among other things." "Important people like me," he continued. The irony not lost on either of us. "Yes, Dad. People exactly like you." The weight of that statement settled over us. For years, he had dismissed my career as insignificant. Yet, it was precisely that career that had saved him and everyone he cared about from a potentially deadly situation. Before he could respond, a resort staff member approached us. "Miss Williams, there are some media representatives asking to speak with you. The manager wanted me to check if you were willing to make a statement." I shook my head. "Please tell them I am not interested in interviews at this time." After the staff member left, my father looked at me with newfound curiosity. "You do not want the publicity? It could be good for your career." "My career is doing fine without it," I replied. "I did not intervene yesterday for recognition." "Then why did you?" he asked. And I was surprised to hear genuine interest in his question. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because people were in danger. Because it is what I am trained for." I paused, then added more quietly, "And because despite everything, I would never stand by and watch you get hurt." Something shifted in his expression then, a softening around the eyes that I had rarely seen directed at me. "Samantha, I owe you an apology," he said, "not just for yesterday, but for years of misunderstanding." It was a start, though misunderstanding hardly covered the years of dismissal and disappointment. "We are now learning more about Samantha Williams, the security expert who prevented what could have been a tragic outcome at yesterday's resort wedding," the anchor was saying. According to Meridian Protection Services, Williams recently led security for the International Finance Summit, protecting over 30 high-level executives and government officials. She has received multiple commendations for her work in threat assessment and is considered one of the rising stars in the private security industry. The camera cut to my boss, Martin Chen, for 74, standing outside Meridian's headquarters. "Samantha exemplifies the highest standards of our profession," he was saying. "Her actions yesterday demonstrate the level of training and commitment our team brings to every assignment. We are incredibly proud of her quick thinking and courage under pressure." The brunch room had fallen silent again, all eyes moving between the television and me. I felt my face flush with embarrassment at being the center of attention, but also with a strange sense of vindication. For years I had carried the weight of my father's disappointment, questioning my own choices despite outward success. Now suddenly my world was being broadcast for all to see, including the father who had never bothered to look. As the news segment ended, a slow, scattered applause began building until the entire room was clapping. My father, after a moment's hesitation, joined in, his eyes never leaving my face. The applause eventually died down, and guests returned to their conversations, though now they all seemed to be about me. I turned back to my father, finding him watching me with an expression I could not quite read. "I think I should go," I said. "This is supposed to be your and Eleanor's celebration, not whatever this has become." "Wait," he said, reaching out to touch my arm, then stopping short when he noticed my bandage. "You were shot protecting us. It is just a graze. That is not the point." He shook his head. "You put yourself at risk for a room full of people who did not even know your name, including me who." He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. The unspoken truth hung between us, including him who had never valued what I did until it saved his life. "Dad, we do not need to do this now," I said suddenly, exhausted by the emotional weight of it all. "You should get back to your guests. We can talk another time." "No," he said firmly. "We have put off this conversation for too long already." "I have put it off." He glanced around at the crowded room. "But you are right. This is not the place. Will you meet me this afternoon before you leave?" "Just the two of us." I hesitated then nodded. "Text me when and where." As I turned to go, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Martin, my boss at Meridian. I excused myself and stepped out to take the call. "Samantha, are you okay?" he asked immediately. "I just saw the full news report." "I am fine," I assured him. "Minor injury, but nothing serious. The company wants to issue a formal statement about your actions." The phone has been ringing off the hook with media inquiries and more importantly new client interest. "What you did is exactly what we train for, but rarely get to demonstrate so publicly." I sighed. "I understand, but I would rather not become the face of the company over this." "I respect that," Martin said. "But there is something else. The CEO wants to meet with you when you get back. Between us, I think there is a promotion coming your way." Your actions reflected everything Meridian stands for. After ending the call, I stood in the hallway processing everything. In the span of 24 hours, my entire relationship with my father had been upended. I had become a minor news story, and my career appeared to be taking a significant leap forward. It was a lot to take in, but as I had learned both in the military and in my security work, sometimes the most important moments come when we least expect them. The question now was what to do with this one. My father texted me to meet at a quiet bar on the resort's top floor, away from the remaining wedding guests. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting alone at a corner table overlooking the ocean. 2 untouched drinks sat on the table. "Club soda with lime," he said, nodding to one of the glasses as I approached. "I remembered you do not drink on duty, and I figured with everything that happened." "Thank you," I said, surprised by the thoughtfulness. It was a small thing, but significant, coming from a man who had rarely paid attention to my preferences. We sat in awkward silence for a moment before he spoke. "I watched more of the news coverage after you left. They interviewed some security expert who explained exactly what you did, how you recognized the threat pattern, how you positioned yourself strategically, how you used minimal force to maximum effect." He shook his head in wonder. "It was like hearing about a stranger except it was my daughter." "That is the problem, Dad," I said quietly. "I have never been a stranger. I have been right here. You just never looked." He flinched as if I had struck him. "I deserved that." "This is not about what you deserve," I replied. "It is about recognition. Basic human recognition of who I am and what matters to me." He nodded slowly. "I always thought I knew what was best for you, the path that would give you the most opportunities, the most security." "Financial security is not the only kind of security," I pointed out, "and following someone else's dream is never as fulfilling as pursuing your own." "I see that now." He took a deep breath. "Yesterday, when that man had a gun to my head, do you know what I thought about? Not the firm, not the stock portfolio, not the vacation homes. I thought about you and your mother and how I had wasted so much time on things that suddenly did not matter at all. I remained silent, letting him continue. And then there you were stepping up, taking control of a situation that had professional security guards backing away. You were magnificent, Samantha. Not because you were on the news or because people are calling you a hero, but because you are completely yourself, confident, capable, calm under pressure. He looked down at his untouched drink. I have never been prouder in my life, and I have never felt more ashamed of how little I have understood or supported you. The words I had longed to hear for years now landed with surprising weight. Part of me wanted to accept this sudden validation and move forward, but another part recognized the need for complete honesty if we were ever to rebuild our relationship. Dad, I appreciate that. I really do. But I need you to understand something. I did not become who I am overnight. I did not suddenly transform into someone worthy of your respect because I was on the news or because I prevented a robbery at your wedding. I have been this person all along, dedicated, skilled, committed to something I believe in. The only thing that changed was your perception. He nodded, accepting the truth of my words. You are right, and I cannot take back the years of dismissal or the damage that caused. I can only tell you that my eyes are open now, and I would like the chance to really know my daughter, the real one, not the one I imagined you should be. That would be a start, I acknowledged. Your mother always said you knew your own mind better than anyone, he admitted with a small smile. She told me years ago that fighting your nature would only drive you away. She was right about that, as she was about many things. The mention of my mother brought a question to mind. Have you spoken to Mom since yesterday? Yes, briefly. She called after seeing the news. His expression softened. She reminded me rather forcefully that she has been attending your professional award ceremonies for years without me. I could not help but smile, imagining my mother's forceful reminder. There is one more thing I need to say, my father continued, his tone serious again. Thank you, not just for what you did yesterday, but for being who you are despite my lack of support. That takes a kind of strength I am only now beginning to appreciate. The sincerity in his voice touched something deep inside me. For the first time in our conversation, I felt the wall between us begin to truly crumble. In the weeks that followed, my life changed in ways both expected and surprising. The footage of the incident went viral, leading to a flood of media requests that I mostly declined. Meridian Protection Services did promote me, placing me in charge of a new division focused on event security and threat assessment training. My injury healed cleanly, leaving only a small scar that I sometimes caught myself touching during stressful moments, a reminder of what I was capable of when it mattered most. Professional recognition came in forms I had not anticipated. I received the Civilian Bravery Award the police captain had mentioned, presented at a ceremony attended by both my mother and, to my surprise, my father. Several security industry publications ran profiles on me, and I was invited to speak at conferences about threat identification and intervention strategies. More meaningful than the public acknowledgement, however, were the private changes. My relationship with my father entered a new phase, tentative at first, then gradually more genuine as he made efforts to understand my world. He asked questions about my work, listened to the answers, and even attended a demonstration of tactical response techniques my team had developed. When a major financial magazine included me in their 40 under 40 list of security professionals, he framed the article and displayed it prominently in his office alongside his own achievements. 6 months after the wedding, he visited my apartment for dinner, something he had never done before. As we sat at my small kitchen table, he looked around at the modest space with new eyes. You know, he said, I always equated success with a certain lifestyle. Big house, expensive car, exclusive address. I know, I replied, serving the pasta I had made. That is why my choices confused you so much. He nodded. But looking at your life now, I see a different kind of success. You have purpose, respect from your peers, work that makes a tangible difference in the world. He hesitated, then added, you have integrity. That is worth more than any corner office. I smiled, recognizing the significance of those words coming from a man who had spent decades chasing corner offices and country club memberships. Does this mean you will stop sending me listings for law school programs? I teased. He laughed, a genuine sound I had heard too rarely. I think I can safely say your current career path is working out just fine. My healing journey extended beyond my relationship with my father. The incident forced me to confront the ways I had internalized his dismissal, sometimes doubting my own choices despite outward success. Through therapy and deep reflection, I began to fully embrace my path. Not in reaction to his disapproval, but as a positive choice that aligned with my values and strengths. I learned that true security comes not from others' validation, but from living authentically. The recognition my father finally gave me was welcome, but I no longer needed it to feel complete. 1 year after the wedding incident, I received an unexpected call from Eleanor. She and my father were hosting a charity gala benefiting first responders, and they wanted me to speak about the importance of security training and emergency preparedness. "Your father is really proud of you," she said, her tone warmer than I had ever heard it. "He tells everyone about your work now. It is actually quite sweet." At the gala, standing at the podium, looking out at a room full of people, including my father, I reflected on how dramatically life can change when we stay true to ourselves, even when those closest to us cannot see our value. Security is not just about protection, I told the audience. It is about creating spaces where people can thrive without fear. Sometimes that means physical safety, but often it means something deeper. A sense of being valued and valued for exactly who you are. I caught my father's eye as I spoke those words, and the look of understanding that passed between us was worth more than any headline or award. Life is rarely as dramatic as those moments at my father's wedding. But the lessons from that day continue to guide me. I learned that sometimes we must save ourselves before we can save others. That recognition often comes from unexpected places, and that it is never too late to rebuild what has been broken. I still work in security, still put myself between danger and those who need protection. But now I do so with the complete knowledge that my path is valid, valuable, and entirely my own.